Hey everyone, how you doing? This is Amon Green, Green Bay Packers all-time leading rusher, and you're watching Packers Total Access Live, your daily source for Packer content. Go Pack, go!
What's up, guys? Welcome into Packers Total Access. My name is Clayton. You can check us out on packernet.com. Find me on Twitter at Packers_access. We're joined alongside a room full of heroes in here. We got Emilio in Tennessee. We got Jacob in Wisconsin. We got Tim in Green Bay. And we got a special guest tonight from Basaraski Productions, Baz himself, the man, the myth, the legend. I just want to say this about this guy, man. When we first started doing the show, he's been someone who's been willing to help me out from day one. Got nothing but respect for him. And if you guys aren't following his latest mock drafts, he's been ripping it up. Learned a ton over there watching the channel. Baz, how you been doing, big dog?
I'm good, Clayton. Thanks for having me. I appreciate all the kind words. Draft season. It's crazy to hear someone say they learn a lot from me in the draft because I'm still learning myself. And it's just like, dude, every week it's learning new prospects, learning what Brian Gutekunst may be doing. And it's hard. It's very hard to try to predict, but I did a decent job last year doing it, but that means I'll probably get zero correct this year, but we're trying out here.
Hey, man, that's the reason you're so good at what you do is because what you just said. We're all still learning. Yeah. The people that think they're arrived and they know what they're doing, they don't have a damn clue what they're doing. And that's the fact. So let's just do this, man. We'll get you out of here quick. I know you got a busy schedule. I just wanted to pick your brain on the draft a little bit. Why don't we start in the first round and just, with pick 23, what's the first thing that comes to mind for you? Because they could go in a multitude of directions. Obviously, they've already met with like Shamar Stewart, Michael Williams, guys like that. We're kind of excited about Jahdae Barron. That's a dude we're a little bit excited about. Now, some see him just as a slot. We see him as someone that might be versatile enough to play on the outside. With that being said, what would you like to see happen with the 23rd pick, and maybe what do you think will happen at this point?
I'm glad you touched up on Jahdae because I agree. I'm with you guys there. I know a lot of people in Packers fear like this guy's just a slot. I don't think sure he could play some of his best football there. But you see the versatility. I like him as a cornerback, but I don't like to be this kind of person to be like, oh, this person's not going to be available, but I truly don't think he will. He could go before Will Johnson, right? Like there could be a scenario where Will Johnson falls to 19-20 if the Packers going to trade up. But I think the resounding, what we've heard from Brian Gutekunst has been he wants to get more draft picks. So I think it would be very funny if the Packers traded out of the first round for the first draft in Green Bay. I just feel like that would be such a Brian Gutekunst thing to do. Shamar Stewart, someone I also like. I'm glad you mentioned him. I know it's either side for Packers fans. It's like, I hate this guy, zero production, but I think when you put on the film and you see what he's tasked with over there on that Aggie defense, it's a little bit different. And I like him as an athlete, and it's not a Packers draft if you're not looking at guys that are extreme athletes that are young with not much production, as you had mentioned, Michael Williams as well. And that's a Georgia defender at that. So that's another guy that you could definitely tie to the Green Bay Packers. But, what we also heard from Brian Gutekunst is, it seems he's very happy or at least content with his edge room. I know a lot of us don't like to hear that. Now, if he's just throwing smoke out there, that could definitely be the case as well. Gutekunst isn't the one that put his, show his hand. But it seems like they just kind of hated Jason Rebrovich, and they're kind of like, all right, let's move on from that. We got Covington in the building. Lucas Van Ness is going to take a next step, which I think we all hope he does. Brenton Cox Jr. actually, took a massive step up later last season. I think a lot of people are kind of underrating him a bit there, and I think he could become something pretty special for this team. But I still think edge is on the board. But where I think where my eggs would be in my basket would be, defensive line. I really think defensive line because, Kenny Clark didn't really get what we wanted out of him last year per se. TJ Slayton left to the Cincinnati Bengals. Carl Brooks is a guy that I think has a ton of potential. I think Colby Wooden's expendable. And when you lose TJ Slayton, who played a decent amount of snaps, kind of that middle of the defensive line guy to help against the run, there are definitely a lot of options in this draft class. Kenneth Grant definitely comes to mind in that first round. Derek Harmon's a guy out of Oregon I really, really like. I see you have that board up here now. I'm just realizing that. But yeah, Derek Harmon, Kenneth Grant are probably my two guys in the first round in terms of defensive line. I haven't really dove much into Darius Alexander, Tyleik Williams, but Walter Nolan's one I'm not too crazy on, and then of course
Okay.
Mason Graham. You're not gonna see him at all for sure for the Packers. But I would say defensive line would be right now my early prediction. Again, we still got a few weeks left, so I'm sure that's going to change. Yeah. We'll see. I know some people are like, oh, the Packers are going to end up with a tackle like Kelvin Banks, but I don't know. It just seems like they're really, really pushing this Jordan Morgan thing to tackle. And it's like they're going to give him the opportunity with the Rasheed Walker. Mm-hmm. So I don't know. It's right now, it does really feel like it's going to be defensive line because I feel like they're comfortable with what they have in edge, not saying they're not going to draft any. And it all seems like they're more comfortable than a lot of us believe at cornerback. And we saw that thing with Jair today working out with McKinney. So who knows if he's back, right? And if he's back, this whole outlook changes. Like you don't target cornerback that early. But yeah, I'm going to go D-line. And if I were to guess it at 23, it's probably going to be Derek Harmon.
I like it. And obviously his specialty is pass rush, right?
Yeah.
And it's funny you mentioned that too, because like when you look at edge defender and people are reading the tea leaves, like, man, the top 30 visits, they're really focusing on edge. That means they're going edge in the first round. If you look at the guys they're looking at, Shamar Stewart, James Pierce Jr., those guys, there's a good chance they're going to be gone by the time the Packers pick. And to me, it makes me think they know what they've got in the defensive tackle room. Not that they won't schedule top 30 visits, but if those edge guys fall, they want to make sure they're prepared. Like, hey, these guys are higher on our board, but we did our due diligence. We know exactly what we got. Are they going to be a fit, that type of thing? As opposed to defensive tackle, like you may be looking, just like you said, Kenneth Grant, Derek Harmon, Walter Nolan, maybe Tyleik Williams, Alfred Collins. They met with Alfred Collins. Maybe they see him as a good enough pick to be at 23 too. Or maybe they're looking to trade back. But we've been on that defensive tackle thing the whole time as well because Kenny aging, the cap number blimps next year. Devontae Wyatt, his pass rush is strong. We got him for another year probably. I think they may pick up the fifth-year option or look to extend him the way Goody talked about him being the most consistent pass rusher on the interior. And then you look to maybe separate from Kenny if you draft that true defensive tackle of the future. You can kind of move on from that contract next year, free up a bunch of cap, and you got the next guy in house. So we're definitely on board there. Let me ask you this. In the second round, what do you think in the second round? Because we've talked about a lot of guys. We talked about wide receivers. We talked about corners. I don't want to steal your thunder. There's a multitude of players really that pop up at that 54th pick that we go, boy, we would love to have those guys. What's your take on pick 54?
So I love diving down into wide receivers. It's my favorite position to break down. And I feel like at 54, I don't think, even though Higgins is consensus 52, I just feel like a team's going to go up and grab Jaden Higgins. And if that could be the Packers trading up. We did it with Christian Watson a few years ago where, you trade up early in the second round, get your wide receiver. But at 54, man, it's going to be Trey Harris. He's my favorite receiver in this class in terms of like value where you can get this guy. I'm really, really high on Trey Harris and what I think he could bring to the Green Bay Packers. When you look at Harris, not the fastest guy per se. And I know we kind of need, more of a take the top off a defense guy. I think you can get that later in the draft. But what really intrigues me about Trey Harris is his ability to just be that pure like X guy, right? And I know it doesn't really exist too much in today's NFL. You always got cheat motions. You got guys moving around all the place, right? But with Trey, man, it's 3 straight seasons of great production and in my opinion, a boring offense. Like when I went back and watched the Ole Miss tape, I'm just like, dude, this is so boring. That's why I'm not really high on Jackson Dart because I'm just watching it. I'm just like, But when he did make the splash plays, you're like, all right, here we are, right? Yeah. And with him, it's just, you see his talent versus man coverage. And I know it's a smaller sample size, but that's not his fault, right? But when you see the reps versus man coverage, I mean, he went off. And like I said, with a boring offense that runs a lot of RPO, he still averaged 17.2 yards per catch this last season. Like I said, he's not a guy that is going to burn by you by any means, but he's a guy that's going to be able to box you out. He's going to be able to go up and win a contested catch. And he's going to be able to beat one-on-one coverage. And those are things the Packers really struggled with last year, especially against man coverage. When you remove Christian Watson out of the equation, he was like our one guy that could beat man coverage when you look at the advanced analytics. So Trey Harris, definitely my favorite guy at wide receiver and probably the route I want the Packers to go in the second round, but I'm interested your guys' thoughts on wide receivers as well, but that's my guy.
Yeah. So Trey Harris is one that's been on our radar a lot. Jaden Higgins as well. Like you said, man, I could see Jaden Higgins kind of rising up boards with Trey Harris. It's funny. You hear pro scouts or people that were formerly scouts like DJ and some of the other guys, Bucky Brooks. The one worry you have with Jackson Dart and even the receivers is like, it felt like Lane Kiffin already had the decision made pre-snap. Like, hey, here's where we're going with the football. Yeah. Now, obviously, Jackson Dart seemed to have impressed at his pro day, kind of taking command and orchestrating pretty much everything on the field. And then it was cool. They said that they opened it up too. They paused the pro day, looked up in the stands and asked the coaches, everybody in attendance from the NFL, what do y'all want to see now? Like taking requests. So that helps a lot. But yeah, with Trey Harris beating man coverage, what was his man coverage grade? Do you guys remember?
95 it was the highest coming out of this class. And again, it's a smaller sample size. When you look into it, it's I forget how many exact reps it is, but it's a smaller sample size. But that's not his fault. Like if a team doesn't play as much man coverage against your offense, like you do with what the reps that you have. But yeah, it's the highest out of the class.
Got it. What about corner? How do you feel about cornerback, man?
Oh man, I guess we can all just kind of wait and see with the whole Jair thing. I'm on the board of them moving on from Jair. Not saying I necessarily think that's their best option. I just think that's what I think they're gonna do, just based off of salary, based off of playability, all of that. Signing Hobbs this offseason, I don't really know what they're going to do with him. Like, to me, I think he's capable outside, but, I think his best ball is going to be in the nickel. But then you have a guy like Javon Bullard there. So corner is an interesting one, but I think at the end of the day, we need depth at outside cornerback. I think that's definitely what has to happen, whether they keep Jair, whether they move on from Jair. Even if they keep Jair, I'm sure they're still going to, want depth at that cornerback spot because, hey, he hasn't been available. And some options I really like, Will Johnson falls. I guess you could go up and grab that guy, but Siobhan Ravel's an interesting one for me because, you see the potential there, but it's really only like one season that, you saw too much. You had 3 games this last season due to the injury. But the season before that, you saw it there, right? Trey Amos is someone that I really like because a lot of these cornerbacks, when you're looking into them, such as Siobhan Ravel, like I mentioned, Will Johnson, Benjamin Morrison, you're all like talking about them and going, all right, they have all of these great things, but right. And you always have like a rebuttal at the end of it. But Trey Amos doesn't really, every player has their negatives for sure. But Trey Amos to me is the one guy that, it just kind of all fits for the Packers there. I was doing my chart today because I do like a whole Google Doc where I go over the Packers thresholds and stuff, try to predict what the Packers are looking at, which is very, very difficult, as I mentioned. But with Trey Amos, he's the only corner in terms of Packers threshold fit that have good man coverage grade, good zone coverage grade, good run defense grade, and had some, ball production this past season. He's the only one with all 4 of those categories. So that's like a 70+ man coverage grade, 70+ zone, and then good run defense grade, and at least like 3 interceptions and a sub 70 quarterback rating allowed. He's the only one that I have. But there's other options. If the Packers don't go cornerback too early, say in the middle round, Zoff Frazier is definitely a guy that's very, very intriguing. That kind of feels like a Packers guy just due to like the extreme athletic profile, 9.28 RAS, 6'3", a little bit on the lighter side, 186, which I know the Packers usually like their corners about like 195. But he allowed a really low passer rating this past season. Zoff, I know it's against lesser competition, but 35.9 passer rating allowed at 6 interceptions, good run defense grade. I think he's projected like the 4th or 5th round. Another guy that's interesting that feels like could be Packers are looking at is obviously Darian Porter, just due to the athletic profile, but he didn't play much football, right? Like he hasn't been I think he only had 1 season starting this last season. Outside of that, hasn't played too much, but you see the profile there, 6'3", 195 pounds, 9.99 RAS, right? Had a passer rating allowed of 4.7 this past season with 3 interceptions, but I know he's pretty poor against the run. He had pretty poor run defense grade, but those are some of the corners I like. Some later ones. Mac McWilliams is interesting. I don't know if you guys consider him a safety. I think he can play, both inside, outside, maybe even some safety, but I'm just starting to really like dive down into like the later round cornerbacks right now. I think on mock draft database, he is listed as a safety. So that's why you're probably not finding him there. So I guess it really just depends where you see him, but yeah, that's kind of where I'm at on corner. I think there are a few guys I like. Oh, Noel Williams is another one. Noel Williams is definitely another one out of Cal. Yeah. A ton of ball productions. I think it's 7 interceptions this past season. Right. Doesn't like fit that Packers threshold, but like he's not like quite there yet. A little bit like a lower of an athlete. I think he had Noel Williams. Do I have him on here? Yeah, he had a 7.01 RAS. So he ran a 4.5 40. His vertical's a little low at 33 and a half, 6 foot 199. So he fits the height weight. Noel Williams, outside guy, 7 interceptions. I really like him, but I'm worried the Packers like kind of maybe don't have him as high on their board.
We all are, man.
Yeah.
We like, that's what we think.
I feel like there's a corner every draft where you go, this guy has a ton of production. Like I love him for the Packers. Then you look up some of the threshold stuff and you're like, ugh. You're like, okay, maybe not. Maybe they won't go with that guy. But Noel Williams is definitely that guy for me this year. But yeah, that's how I feel on corner.
Got it, man. Good stuff. Well, before we let you go, is there a prospect that you go, man, late in the draft? It doesn't have to be a specific position. Just what's the first person that comes to mind that you go, man, I really think people might be sleeping on this guy? Do you have like one of those favorite late round guys that come to mind? No matter what the position?
It's going to be I like wide receiver. Like I said, it's the one thing I like breaking down the film the most, and it's going to be Elijah Badger out of Florida.
We've been talking about him, Baz.
Really?
The drop percentage,
no drops
against man coverage.
Yeah. He was a dog at ASU even, and a lot of people like a couple of years ago had like a pre not mock draft, but like board. And he was very high on some of those boards, like prospect 70, 80, 90. Right. And if they had any bit of consistency at quarterback, man, he's 1,100 yard receiver. And we're talking about him in the second round. Like I fully believe they're rotating quarterbacks. They're doing the old Wisconsin Badger. I don't know if you guys remember the Tanner McAvoy days and all that. I don't even know what they're doing over there, but Elijah Badger's interesting. I think both those guys coming out, Shamir DK and Elijah Badger, honestly, I think are going to be decent prospects at that wide receiver position. But you see Badger, man, the contested catch rates up at like 68.8%, grade versus man coverage 88.5, 0 drops this past season. We all want more of 0 drops from our receivers this next season for sure. So he's a guy I really like, is Elijah Badger. He's definitely my like sleeper guy, and if the team ends up with him in the 7th round, I think it's gonna be a steal.
Got it. Yeah, when I seen the 0% drop percentage, I'm like, that's got to be a typo. And then you go back and check, like,
yeah,
I'm pretty sure he didn't drop a pass all year. It's pretty wild. So, yeah, exactly. Yeah. Baz, it's so good to catch up with you, man. Like, we can't thank you enough for dropping in, bro. I want to respect your time here, and we'll let you get out. But, man, if there's anything we can ever do for you, let us know, dude. For sure.
Dude, for sure. I really appreciate you guys for having me on. I love talking draft because that's honestly, like, outside of – I'd say watching the Packers on Sunday, draft is definitely my favorite time of the year. Definitely my favorite time of the year.
Can I ask Baz one question?
Yeah, go for it, guys. I got time.
What do you think about Torrey Horton?
I like Torrey Horton. I like Torrey Horton. He's a guy, was it like 4th round projection, right? Something like that.
Mm-hmm.
He's another guy like a receiver where, a lot of the receivers the Packers have drafted, they kind of either had a down or injured year the past season that they're getting drafted in, but then the year before that you look at and you're like, oh, okay, you see it there. So Horton, I think had, was that 9.79 RIS, 4.41 140, 6'2", 196 pounds. And if you look back at 2023, his grade versus man coverage is pretty high, 76.4, very, very low drop rate at 4.8%. He can also run block. He had right around a 70.0 run block grade there. So he's a guy that I definitely do like in the 4th round. I watched some of his film over there at Colorado State, and he's a guy I do like.
Good stuff, man. Good stuff. Yeah, it looks like the latest mocks have him 3rd to 4th round. I'd be
3rd to 4th. Yeah, that makes sense. Like 120. Hey, if we could get Torrey Horton at 124, I'm cool with that.
Absolutely, man. Well, bro, it's good catching up, dude. If there's anything we can do, like I said, let us know, man. We'll be watching the channel as always. You're killing it. Absolutely crushing it.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you, guys. All right, guys. Appreciate it.
Take care, man. Appreciate it, man. All right, that was Baz from Basaraski Production, one of the best YouTube channels.
There's no way they're not following Baz and following us. There's just no way.
He didn't hop on for promotion, I promise.
Yeah, no doubt. Yeah.
If anything, you probably lost a couple.
If anything, give us a shout out on your channel, Baz.
Oh, man. No, he's awesome, dude. I'm telling you, since day one, I reached out to him like, bro, love your channel. Getting ready to get mine cranked up. What do you think? He's been nothing but a sounding board. Hey, try this, go with that. Some people, they're up on their little pedestal, not him, dude. He's just down to earth, really good dude. So you guys know that.
He knows what he's talking about too,
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Big factor right there for sure.
Yeah. Greg Rice said, I hope we're letting Baz pick a mock with the PTA big board. He'd see that board and go, get this crap out of him.
Yeah, that's just
What are you talking about? Artie the Prophet in the chat. Yo, fellas, just received the signed LVN jersey. Thank you. My first ever jersey. Y'all are awesome. Hey, thank you for supporting the show, Artie. Appreciate it, man. Glad you got it okay and everything. And that reminds me, too, reached out to Chewy. He won the autograph Mason Crosby card. And it's crazy. Chewy this was his third time winning. And here come the rigged comments, right? So I reached out to Chewy and was like, bro, you need to go buy a lottery ticket. Okay. That's what you need to do right now because you just want to, he said, give it to somebody else. He said, y'all have already been too kind giving me stuff. So Michael Godfrey was the second place winner. Michael Godfrey, hit us up as soon as possible. You can email PackersTotalAccess@gmail.com. If you're in the Patreon group, just send me a direct message. You can also text me 865-658-5824. If we don't hear from him, Roger Davis was the third place winner. So both of you guys reach out, and if we don't hear from Michael Godfrey, we'll go ahead and get it to Roger. So there you go with that. But yeah, Hardy, again, thanks for supporting the channel, buddy. We appreciate you. So we're going to get into a couple of different topics, and not before we do, because we get a little bit deep into some of these talking points. Is there anything you guys want to hit on before we dive into anything here? Anything at all at the forefront of your mind?
negative.
Yeah. All right, cool. Let's do it. So let's start off here with, since we're already talking draft with Baz, let's just kind of stay in that vein there. And we put this article together earlier today, and we'll go ahead and get the banner back up there with the picks. So we'll have that. So you guys know we did what we did with pick 54 last night, right? We just basically went through and did the same exact thing with pick 87. All right. So these are 5 prospects that could be available for Green Bay at pick 87. So when the Packers make their choice with the 87th pick in the third round, there's a good chance these players could still be available. Below are scouting reports on each, along with their ranking on the PTA big board. Notably, all 5 have met with the Packers at some point, whether through visits, workouts, or interviews during the 2025 NFL draft process. Number 1 on this list is Benjamin Morrison. He comes in at the 77 spot out of Notre Dame. One of those dudes that had an excellent year. I think it was last year. He looked really, really strong. He had the hip injury, so if everything checks out, I feel like his value is somewhere around the 77 spot. There's many people that see him as a first to second rounder, though. Here's what the scouting report says. Benjamin Morrison is a highly skilled cornerback with elite instincts and ball skills, making him one of the top cover men in the class. He's fluid in his hips, if the hip is healthy, of course. I made that up there. Making him one of the top cover men in the class. Yeah, he's fluid in the hips, sticky in man coverage, and has a knack for creating turnovers, as shown by his standout 2024 season. While some project him as a potential first-round pick due to his upside, concerns about his slot frame and occasional struggles against physical receivers could see him slide. If he's available at 87, Morrison would be a steal for the Packers, offering immediate cornerback 2 potential with CB1 traits in Green Bay's secondary. So here's the PFF grades from the last 3 years. 2022, 77.3. 2023, 79.4. 2024, 71.4. And you see the majority of his snaps have come outside at 272 last year. Let's just go around the horn with it, boys. How would y'all feel about Benjamin Morrison at 77? It kind of feels like a pipe dream, but that's where he's on the board, so I figured we'd hit it.
I wouldn't be all right with it, or I'd be okay with it, but it's kind of like how Baz is just talking about. He definitely peaked in the year prior where he almost had an 80 flat grade, looks like some injury issues, obviously in 2024. So, but he's been pretty steady Eddie his whole career. I'd be okay with it, especially being in the third. I think I'd be all right with it.
But you, Tim, how you feel about it, man?
Yeah, I would agree with that. I mean, we're talking 3rd round pick, right? So this is assuming we don't go first or second with a corner, top tier corner. You could do a lot worse than Benjamin Morrison, I think, regardless of the injury history. I mean, on the younger side, skill set is there, it's kind of hit or miss. Corner is one of those position groups in this draft that I feel like you got to hit early if you really want that top tier crop of the talent. But when you get to 3rd round and beyond, there are some guys there, and Benjamin Morrison would definitely be on that list for sure.
Got it. What about you, Excelio? How do you feel about Benjamin Morrison at 87?
Looking at his numbers in Excel there, Clay, we had him consensus 22 when we got it in. Obviously, he had the injury the last year. Coming off an injury, they're going to happen. I think that, it seems maybe not as bad if it's one and done, clean tear, clean rip, whatever. I mean, I picked up a little speed after I tore my ACL. Doesn't mean anything, but it's just a mental hurdle. Can you get through that? Played at Notre Dame, big school, been in, big competition, stuff like that. I wouldn't mind it if we had the wide corner, at some point. If Ja's not the move, we're going to have to figure something out.
Yeah, definitely. Greg Ross says, Excelio. Love it. All right. His RAS obviously incomplete as he's still rehabbing from that hip injury, but he did come in with a 9 1/4 inch hand size. His arm length was 30.3. Height was 6 foot, a little over 6 foot at 7.99 is what it scored. 193 pounds. So he's got the weight the Packers like there, right at it. A 6.98. And then a bench press, man. 17 reps. That was pretty impressive, man. There's some offensive linemen that finished with like 22 reps.
That's like Jacob in the gym. Just
exactly.
Him up.
And look at that right there. He is a physical corner when he's healthy. There's no doubt about it, man. Like he will come up and lay the wood. He's not scared to play the run. Obviously a 76.7 run defense grade. And again, I know it surprises people because I'm a huge Notre Dame fan and I have not been like standing on the mountain for this, shouting from the mountaintop for this guy. But I just feel like there's other corners like Trey Amos grabbed my attention way quicker than Benjamin Morrison did. Now, Benjamin Morrison was a captain as well. There's a lot of leadership qualities there. Teammates absolutely loved him. But I don't know, man. I have a hard time believing he's going to be there at 87. And I personally think that 54 would be a reach, but many people see him as a first-round pick. Let me ask you guys that. Do y'all think Benjamin Morrison is worthy of a first-round pick? Am I the only one that feels like he isn't?
I don't think he will go in the first. I could see him in the mid to late second, though.
Got it.
I think it depends on who's picking, right?
Yeah.
I mean, if Jahdae Barron's on the board, I'd probably take him over Morrison. But, that I'm speaking from a Packer fan perspective. There's, 31 other teams out there that are in this draft. So I think there's a chance he could go first round. I don't think it's completely unreasonable.
Yeah. I think you're spot on, Tim, just because the way he's tracked, PFF had him 15th. Consensus had him 22nd when we got the numbers. I mean, if he's up that early and then everybody else hops up a position, stuff like that, I think teams will still kind of eye him as being that talent that's there. I feel like it's sort of like Simmons, the tackle. Dude was would have been the best tackle in the draft if he didn't get hurt. And then having the guard have it pop out to his spot. So who's going to get the steal of the draft if you take a chance on the quote unquote hurt guy? And bring him in. Right.
Christy Casualin says, has he been healthy, Clayton? Again, up till that hip injury, to the best of my knowledge, he was always healthy. I mean, he scored, with his PFF grades, he's got full scores. It's not like there was any year where he missed significant time, to the best of my knowledge. I always remember him being a fixture. I remember me and Tim and Jacob and Emilio doing the college football podcast that we did there for a short time in the off season or leading into the college football season. And he was like one of the top 3 corners in the draft. He was right up there in the mix.
And like Baz was saying earlier about like prototypical corners for the Packers. I mean, 6 foot 190. He's like right in that sweet spot as far as the measurables. And then injury history.
Actually a little bit heavier than that too, Tim, at the combine at 193. So it's on his mind. Know that.
Nice. So he got a little thicker. I like that. But, I mean, you look at the injury history, obviously you got to take that into consideration. But, I mean, the guy just turned 21. Like, he's 21 on the nose. So, you've got a little time to develop him as a pro. I mean, this could be a guy that, maybe doesn't have the most out-of-this-world rookie season, but year 2 for him could be a huge jump in the NFL, depending on, how he develops.
Yeah. One of the other things that kind of hurts his draft stock a little bit is everyone, as soon as he went down, everybody was like, oh, no, Notre Dame's screwed. And Marcus Freeman, the way he recruits that secondary, I mean, he's got that secondary humming. Xavier Watts, hearing obviously Greg Cosell talk about him earlier today, he was raving over Xavier Watts. Sounds like he's higher on him than I am as well. But they were able to just turn that cornerback, that whole secondary room completely over after Benjamin Morrison got hurt, and here they go playing the national championship. So I think that kind of hurts his stock a little bit. Like, many people looked at him like that's the cornerstone of the DB room for Notre Dame. He goes down, and they just never miss stride. So I think that plays a little bit of a role as well.
4-star recruit coming out in 2022. Right now, consensus has him going in the first round 55.5% of the time. Best ranked was 22nd. His projected round is probably second, but all the mocks that are going, I don't see anybody taking him past 30 at the Bills. All the recent mocks that have done.
Good stuff, man. Appreciate that info. All right, moving along. In the number 80 spot on our PTA big board is wide receiver Jalen Royals out of Utah State. Obviously, that is Jordan Love's alma mater. There's a little bit of a pipeline being created there from the Packers scouts. Jalen Royals is a smooth, explosive wide receiver who thrives as a deep threat and after-the-catch playmaker. His 2024 tape highlights his ability to stretch the field with speed and track the ball downfield, though he's still refining his route tree and consistency against press man coverage. Royals' big play potential make him an intriguing fit for Green Bay's offense, where he could develop into a complementary weapon. Projected as a third-round talent, he brings the kind of juice that could elevate the Packers' passing game. And, of course, with the PFF grades in 2022, he didn't play much, 47.8. In 2023, he jumps all the way to 78.6, and he improved again in 2024, jumping to 79.6. You see, he lined up out wide last year, 379 snaps. He was in the slot, 82 snaps. How do y'all feel about Jalen Royals? We'll start with you this time, Emilio. What do you think about Jalen Royals, man?
Yeah, I like it. 6 foot, at least we got him over that marker. He's, graded out well, 69, 65th. PFF had him 72nd and 70th when we had him in there. I wouldn't be opposed to it. Kid's willing. He's out there on kick return. Someone that not afraid to get hit if you're out there on kick return. I mean, you got to be ready to get smoked. So I like the toughness there coming from Utah State. Let's see if we get another dog like Jordan Love.
Yeah, and Jacob, obviously the Packers seen something in him. They already met with him once. What do you think about Royals? Would you be okay with him there in the third round?
Yeah, I definitely would. You look back, again, another player that had his best year a year prior. In 2023, he played 13 games, had a 78.6, which even more impressive is predominantly out wide, almost 500 snaps out there, targeted almost 100 times, caught 70 balls for 1,084 yards, averaging over 15.5 yards per reception, and he had 15 receiving touchdowns. That's pretty impressive there, 15. The only thing that gives me a little bit cause for concern is that in 2022, he only played 7 games. 2024 only played 7 games. So if there's a little bit of an injury concern, I definitely would be a little bit worried, but I can't tell if the 2022 was more of him just not getting time on the field because he was young and sharing time and all that. Receiving grade of an 80.6, drop rate of a 5.2. So that's right where we want it to be. 3.0 yards per route run, right where we want it to be. And what was really cool, even though he may have played limited snaps and limited games in 2024, he basically progressed every single year. So his first game went from a 64 to a 66, slight drawback at a 62, then a 71.9, 74.6, 75, finishing with a 78.9. So that's the type of progression I want to see every game, every week. He gets better.
Yeah. Coach Lynn says Royals in the third, then Dante Thornton in the fifth. I'd be over the moon with that draft. I mean, it just shows you there's talent all the way across the board with this draft. Tim, what do you think about Royals, man? I know he's not named Higgins, but what do you think about Jalen Royals there in the third round? If for some reason you can't land Higgins, because like Baz said, he thinks he'll be gone at 54, which we kind of talked about that.
Yeah, for sure. I like Jalen Royals a lot. I really do. And in the third round, again, you could do a lot worse, especially like if we don't hit on a receiver first or second round. I'd be looking to a guy like this if he's still on the board. Definitely more of a possession guy, able to play on the outside and in the slot, and kind of a yak machine. He's a good yards after the catch kind of dude, which would be a good complement to, guys like Tucker Kraft and, a few other pass catchers that we have that extreme yak ability. He's not going to blow you out of this world with his, route running and athleticism or anything. But the fact is he's a solid option in the third round. Again, if he makes it there, right, this guy could very well be off the board in the second round as well. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I definitely like Jalen Royals for sure.
Definitely could with the RAS. He scored a 9.00. He meets the height and weight threshold. He blows the weight threshold out of the water there, as the Packers like those guys around 190, 195. He's sitting at 205 weight-wise at 6 foot even, 36-inch vert, 10.01 broad jump. His 40-yard dash of 4.42. That's pretty darn good. You closing in on 4.3 speed there at that weight. It's impressive. 20-yard split of 2.56. 10-yard split of 1.53. Pretty evenly ran 40-yard dash. And then, of course, he has a good composite agility grade as well, with a shuttle of 4.25 and a 3-cone of 6.94. So that's Jalen Royals. Again, he is in the number 80 spot on our PTA big board. Moving along to the next prospect here, we got Greg Cosell's one of his favorite players in this draft, Mr. Braden Swinson, edge defender out of LSU. Here's a scouting report on him. Braden Swinson is a high-motor edge rusher with a relentless approach and a solid frame for the position. He's shown growth as a pass rusher in 2024 using quick hands. It's exactly what Greg Cosell said. He uses his hands better than any pass rusher in this draft, is what he said. And a strong bull rush to collapse pockets. He also said, you've got to play with power at the NFL level. Braden Swinson does that. It's another thing that he said. Again, the Packers have already met with him as well. To collapse pockets, though he's still working on his flexibility around the edge. Swinson's effort and power make him a strong run defender as well. Likely a day 2 or early day 3 pick, he could provide the Packers with valuable depth and rotational upside along their defensive front. When you look at the PFF grades here, starting in 2020 at 61.2, 60.1, then he jumps to a 73.2, then he climbs up in 2023 to an 81.0, and then in 2024, he jumped even further to an 83.3. His pass rush grade last year at 90.3. This dude, I don't agree with what the scouting report says right here, to be honest with you, with the day 3 anyway. I think this dude's going to be gone in the second round, most likely. Now, if he makes it to the third round for us, awesome. And some people are probably going, why are you talking about if he's going to be gone? Because we're showing where these players are on our board, right? Like this is around that range where we would look up and go, the board lines up with the prospect right here. Right. I'll start with you here, Jacob. What do you think about Braden Swinson, man? 6'4", 250 is what the card shows, although the RAS measurements had him at 6'3", 255.
Yeah, I mean, either way, this kid is starting to grow on me quite a bit. You talked about how being consistent. He's played consistently 10 games, 12 games, 13 games. You talk about ascending score. He goes from a 73.2 to an 81 flat to an 83.3. You talk about production. He went from 0 sacks to 2 sacks to 9 sacks. He had 43 hurries in 2024. I'll say it again, 43 hurries, which was even more impressive is that the pass rush grade, yes, 90.3. Run defense grade, though, like you said, almost a 70. That is very well-rounded, super. Would love to have that addition on that line. And then the true pass rush grade of a 91.4, and which is just insane, is the pass rush win rate, 22.1%. Like, what? Are you kidding me? And if you look at his whole season breakdown, 13 games, the worst game that he had of the whole season was in week 1 against the USC, and it was a 61-7. Other than that, he never had basically a single game that was below a 65. It was just insane. Most of the games he's in the 80s, high 70s, high 60s. It's just consistent as all can be.
Love it. What about you, Tim? What do you think about Braden Swinson there at 87?
I mean, I agree with Jacob. This is a guy that's kind of been growing on me, the last couple of weeks here. And, honestly, I think if he adds, I shouldn't say adds because he's got it already, but if he continues to develop that run D side of his game, he's going to be a monster in the NFL. And I think if we're talking third round, like any team that gets, if he's on the board in the third round and you don't draft this guy, I feel bad for you. I really do. I do think there is a good chance that he goes a lot sooner. And, pass rush is a huge need, for the Packers. We've talked about it, Goody's comments aside about being happy with the personnel we have doesn't mean you can't constantly get better at the edge position in particular. So I definitely think that, Swinson is one of those dudes that's kind of cut from that cloth that, what his strengths are, but if he, develops on the things that he's not quite known for, I mean, this guy's going to be a complete player. Definitely someone to look at.
Greg Ross asks, isn't he too light for Goot? At 255, that seems to be the cutoff. It's like it starts at 255. Now, if it's a first-round pick, I would say probably want to stretch it to 260, 265 unless you're ranked extremely high like James Pierce Jr. But the fact that they already met with Swinson tells me they feel like they could put some weight on this kid. Obviously played at 250 at LSU according to that, and then at RAS you already put on 5 pounds to go into the combine. Emilio, he came in at 6'3.5", 255 pounds. His shuttle 4.33, and his three cone a 7.13, scoring an 8.49 and an 8.17. Arm length 33.3. Obviously, his hands at 9.8 as well. But man, the way he uses his hands, it's all about technique with that dude.
Mm-hmm. Two things to that. Latu was the best guy with his hands last year, right? That's who they were talking, best guy with his hands, and maybe pass rush sets and wins. Obviously, his pass rush repertoire isn't as good as Latu, but I like where that's starting. I also like that he did the shuttle and the composite. That's something that they're getting away from a lot because they're getting cooked on that. Like if you don't have a good shuttle, if you're not at 7 or below 7, for a speed guy and things like that, it's really going to really hurt your stock just because you can't get in and out of your brakes, the explosion, all that. So I think that it's cool that they see the frame, they like it. Let's bring them in here. Let's do something with it from a big school. It's right up their alley.
Definitely. All right. For those of you listening on the pod, that's going to do it for hour 1. We will continue this conversation with Pick 87 on the other side for hour 2. We appreciate y'all.